the success of the surge. And one of the things that's gotten a lot of attention was the discussion of top secret operations. You wouldn't discuss it last night on 60 Minutes. I understand, I didn't see the Washington Post today. There's a little more explanation of it in the Washington Post, that we have things we are doing that are, for want of a better word, incredible in assessing and learning knowledge of the enemy. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
I would love to. As a reporter, that all my instincts say, let's tell the story. When I learned about it, asked senior people in the White House, senior people in the military, they said, it wasn't a matter of request, they said, you can't write about this. This will get people killed. This accounts for a good portion, there's a debate about what proportion, but a good portion of our success. And when you look at the data and you see what they can do in these operations, it's astounding. I somewhat compare it to the Manhattan Project in World War II, which led to the atomic bomb. Wow. It was a big explosion. In this case, there's not going to be a big explosion. There's going to be a drop-off in violence and targeted killing of people who are the enemy leaders. And if you look at the chart, it's a ski slope right down in a matter of months, cutting the violence in half. This isn't going to happen with a bunch of joint security stations or the surge. These top secret operations, which someday in history will be described to people's amazement.
When will we learn of them?
I don't know. I mean, that is up to others. I sat with the 4-star general and described what I knew about this, and I rarely have seen the blood actually drain from somebody's face, but it did in this case. And he said, you just cannot write about them. And I see why, but it's a factor in all of this. It is a wonderful example of American ingenuity solving a problem in war, as we often have.
And it's being used right now.
It certainly is.
We have an email question from Margie in Asheville, North Carolina. Mr. Woodward, do you think it's in the country's best interest for you to divulge the existence of these secret operations? Even if you don't give any details, aren't you kind of giving the enemy a heads up?
The enemy has a heads up because they've been getting wiped out, and a lot of them have been killed. It's not news to them. As I said the other night, if you were a member of Al-Qaeda or the resistance or some extremist militia, you would be wise to get your rear end out of town. It is very dangerous, and by not giving the details, the operations can go forward.
By the way, the president will announce tomorrow he's bringing home 8,000 combat support forces over the next several months. Any comment?
Well, there are reports saying he's going to keep the number that are there until the end of the year, and those 8,000 are going to come out in the early part of next year. I'm not exactly sure what has been decided, but whatever the decision about 8,000 troops might be, there are 140,000 troops
in place
there. That is a massive land army. This is a war that is not over. We've always been surprised in Iraq since the invasion when there were no weapons of mass destruction. It's been violence by the insurgency, Sunni Shia violence, the homegrown Al-Qaeda rising up. General Petraeus, who's still commander there, is keeping that massive army there because, as he has said, it is fragile and reversible. The next commander-in-chief is going to get the job of dealing with the Iraq war.
You report in the book that there's a lot of intelligence, they learn a lot about Maliki all the time. Is that true?
Yes, indeed.
They spy on him?
Yes. People say they even know everything he says. Somebody else says, well, you can't ever know everything that somebody says or what they're thinking in their head. But this is a spying operation on another country's leader that is an ally, somebody we deal with daily. A number of people said to me, we spend all this time trying to figure out what Maliki is doing, and it accounts in part for why we haven't focused enough on what we're doing. Spy on your enemies, go to it. It's something that goes on in every war. The level of effort spent spying on a friend like Maliki, too many people said it really doesn't make sense, and it's not clear it's useful to President Bush, who talks to Maliki regularly.
You contend the president has locked in the current strategy in Iraq so much so that even after he leaves office, it's going to be hard to change it. Is that true?
Yeah, that is, because he has put General Petraeus, who moves up in about a week to be the central commander, and then General Odierno will become the Iraq commander. And these are people who've been very successful in Iraq. They're popular and respected in the Congress, and Petraeus is one of the people who really understood the war and figured out what to do. And so he's going to be central commander. It is, my old boss at the Post used to say, he's fireproof. They can't fire him or change him unless he voluntarily wants to leave. He has a very fixed view about what to do, what the strategy should be, and that they should maximize the number of forces there.
You've done multiple in-depth interviews with George W. Bush and been on this program to discuss all of them. In fact, you did a total of 11 hours just on Afghanistan and Iraq. How has he changed, Bob?
He is still speaks with confidence, but some of the bluster is gone, some of the certainty. A couple of times in these recent interviews he spoke of winning and then immediately corrected himself to say we had to succeed in Iraq. And when I asked, what are you going to say to Obama or McCain when they succeed you and come into the Oval Office here on January 20th, 2009, whoever that is, what's you're going to say in terms of describing what they should think about in terms of the Iraq war, this thing that you're handing off to them? And the president said he would tell them, he would tell the new president, don't let it fail, which of course is very different than all of this talk about victory and winning and transforming the world with democracy. Don't let it fail means kind of let's hang on.
Why? You've often been very critical of him in your last book, very critical of him. Why do you think he talks to you?
I think I have presented his side. I have presented what occurred. You know, a number of people have read this and said, well, yes, it was slow. Yes, as the White House press secretary said, it was brutal. But he made a decision that has led us to a much better condition. And if you are of the Karl Rove view of politics and life in America, which is everything gets measured by outcomes, you could look at this and say it's a positive. I thoroughly present the president's views and his words. At the same time, after doing 4 books, good friends and editors at the Washington Post and Simon & Schuster said, look, you may know as much about this as anybody on the outside. You need to tell us what you think, what your conclusions are. And my conclusions are tough. And it goes to the question of what are your expectations of a president who started a war 3.5 years into it when it's failing, and he says there's no hurry, when he is not at some of the meetings, when he will not get the chief players here all together and knock their heads and say, we have to fix this.